up, ready to go. We're going to start, before we do the first panel session, I think everybody here who has worked on these studies, who is in the private sector, who's working in multilateral organizations who are in this space, knows already that it's really, really important to have workers' voices in the room when discussing worker well-being. And I think, in conferences like these especially, it's sometimes very hard logistically to make that happen. And so, as a proxy, we thought it'd be useful to just speak with some workers, who are kind of on the front lines and who know best, in some sense, what their needs are and what businesses can do to meet those needs. And to that end, we're just going to play two short videos that come out of worker conversations. One from a woman working as a tailor in the Mysore region in a garment factory, and the other from a supervisor in a garment factory in the Delhi area. So these two workers kind of just talking about their experiences, their lives, and this is just meant to give you a sense of the kinds of conversations we need to be having on a regular basis to design the sort of action that we're talking about today. And we hope that you enjoy this and continue that kind of engagement with workers in the work that we do. So do I play the do I push start or yes?
ನಮ್ದು ಇಬ್ಬರು ಅಣ್ಣಂದಿರು ಇಬ್ರು ತಮ್ಮಂದಿರು ನಾನು ಒಬ್ಬಳೇ ಮಗಳು. ಮುಗೀತು, ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಬರೋ ದಿನವೇ ನನ್ನ ಮದುವೆ ಫಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಮದುವೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದು? 90. ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ ಈಗ ತುಂಬ ಕುಟುಂಬ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಲೇಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಇವತ್ತಿನಿಂದ ಅವತ್ತಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಿರ್ಧಾರ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋಂಥದ್ದು, ನಾನು ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ಇದಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಈ ವಾತಾವರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವರು ಇದಕ್ಕೂ ನಾವು ಸ್ಪಂದಿಸ್ಬೇಕಿತ್ತು. ಹಂಗಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹಿಂಜರಿದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹಂಗೇನೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳಾಯ್ತು. ನಮ್ಮೂರಲ್ಲಿನೇ ಒಂದು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಶಾಲೆಗೆ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಬನ್ನಿ ಟೀಚರ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದು ಇದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ, ಓದಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಏನಾಗ್ತಾರೆ ನಾನು ಫಸ್ಟು ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ತಯಾರಾಗಿ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದೆ, ಮಿಷಿನ್ ಬಂದೆ ನಿಂತೆ, ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮೀಸಲು ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಗಪ್ಪ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಏನೇನು ಫ್ಯಾಬ್ರಿಕ್ ಹಿಂಗೆ ನನ್ಗೆ ಬಂದೆ. ಗಾರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ನನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಥರ ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಗಾರ್ಮೆಂಟು ಒಂಥರ ಇದಾಯ್ತು ಮೇಡಮ್. ಆವಾಗ ಅವರು ಎದುರು ಬೇಡಮ್ಮ ಇವತ್ತು ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕೂತಿದ್ದು. ಇವತ್ತು ಅದರಲ್ಲೇ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಟ್ರಿಪಲ್ ತಗೊಂಡೆ, ಟೈಲರಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಟೈಲರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ ಐತಿ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಥರ ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರೆ, ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಮುಟ್ಟಿನ ವಿಚಾರ ಆದಾಗ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಜೆಂಟ್ಸು, ಸೂಪರ್ವೈಸರ್ ಆಗಿ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜರ್ ಆಗಲಿ ಅವರ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋಂಥದ್ದಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಜೆಂಟ್ಸೇ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕಡೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು 90% ನಾವು ಮಹಿಳೆಯರೇ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ. ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಆ ಥರ ಮುಟ್ಟಿನ ವಿಚಾರ ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ, ನಾಚಿಕೆ ರಿಸ್ಕೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಸಹಜವಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರ್ತದೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅದನ್ನು ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಹಿಂಸೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾವಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಮಹಿಳೆಯರು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ 90% ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಾವು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಒಬ್ಬರನ್ನ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಮಗೆ ನಾವು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸರ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಹೆಲ್ಪಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಬಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಸರ್, ಹೇಳಿ ನಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಆಯ್ತಮ್ಮ ಅಂತ ಅದು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಹೇಳೋದು ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ನಾವು ವಿಚಾರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋದು ಆಯ್ತಮ್ಮ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ ವಿಚಾರದಲ್ಲಂತೂ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ವಾತಾವರಣ ಇದೆ. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ಗಳು ಅಥವಾ ಅದನ್ನ ತರಬೇತಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸಿದ್ರೆ? ಹೌದು ಮೇಡಮ್, ಬೇಕು. ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಬಂದ್ರು ಈಗ ಪರ್ಸೆಂಟೇಜ್ ಮಹಿಳೆಯರಿಗೆ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ಜೆಂಟ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ಏನಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ ಆದ್ರೂ ಅದು 90% ಅಂತೂ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕವಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೇವೆ ಆಗಿ ಯಾವ ಒಂದು ಅಫಿಷಿಯಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದು ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟ್ರೆಂತ್ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಬಂತು ಅದು ಲೀಗಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಇದು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಕಾನೂನು ರೀತಿಯ ಪರಿಚಯ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಈಗ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಅಷ್ಟೇನೂ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗೊತ್ತೈತೆ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಇನ್ನೂ ತಿಳುವಳಿಕೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾನೂನು ರೀತಿ ಒಳ್ಳೊಳ್ಳೆ ಮನವರಿಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಕಾನೂನು ರೀತಿ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕವಾಗಿ ನಾನಾ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಇರೋರಿಗೆ ಸಾಲ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಇತ್ತು, 1000 ಜನ ಇದ್ರೆ 1000 ತರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ ನನಗಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಗಿರಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮ್ಗಿದ್ದಂಗೆ ನಮ್ಗಿರಲ್ಲ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಕೆಲವು ಕಾನೂನು ಅರಿವು ಮೂಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. ಇಂಥ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಬೇಕು ಅನಿಸ್ತು.
और जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि मैं एज ए हेल्पर यहाँ ज्वाइन हुई थी और अब मैं मुझे बहुत अच्छा ज्वाइनिंग के फर्स्ट ईयर में मेरी ट्रेनिंग हुई थी, तो वो अभी तक ही मुझे काम में है। जैसे सबसे पहले तो कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल, अब मुझे बात करने में कोई झिझक नहीं होती है। जैसे हम 3000 मशीनों पर जो ऑपरेटर काम करते हैं उन्हें समझाना, उनकी बातों को सुनना और फिर अपने सीनियर के आगे उनकी बातों को ले जाना। ये नहीं डर लगता मुझे इसकी बात मान नहीं बोलूँगी, मुझे डर पड़ेगी, ये सब एकदम से खत्म हो चुका। मैं कहीं भी जाके कोई भी बात अपने सामने वाले को बोल के सामने वाली बातों का क्वेश्चन आंसर भी मैं आराम से कर देती हूँ। मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है। लेकिन ये गैर बेस प्रोग्राम है तो वैसे सारे वर्ग बहुत अच्छे हैं, लेकिन इसमें गोल और गोल सेटिंग का जो आया था ना, वो कहीं ना कहीं मेरे माइंड में सेट हो गया। क्योंकि जैसे उसमें हमें पेपर दिया गया कि आप लिखो आप क्या करना चाहते हो, तो हमने जैसे एक्स्ट्रा लिखा कि घर बन जाए, बच्चे पढ़ जाए या ये हो जाए, तो जैसे उस पर लगा तो उस पर क्वेश्चन हमारे लिए हमारे टीचर ने क्वेश्चन लगा कि आप अपने लिए बताओ, तो अपने लिए क्या करना होता, नौकरी कर ली बहुत है, लेकिन नहीं, फिर वहीं वो दिमाग में लगा कि यार सच बोल रहे हो तो कुछ कर सकते हैं। फिर उसके बाद जो मेरे पास चुनौती आई मैंने उसको एक्सेप्ट किया, उससे स्टेप बाय स्टेप उसके साथ चलती गई और मैं आज आपके सामने इस तरह से बैठी हूँ कि मैं इतनी बड़ी कंपनी में PSO के पोस्ट पे हूँ, सुपरवाइजर के पोस्ट पे, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है। जैसे उसमें हमने ये भी सीखा था कि अपने घर परिवार में जाके बातचीत करो, एक दूसरे से बताओ समझाओ, तो ये जो चीज़ें मैंने उसमें मैंने सीखे वही मैंने जाके अपने घर में या अपने कार्यक्षेत्र में उसको ही अपने ऊपर लागू किया। उससे ही मुझे ये स्टेप बाय स्टेप चलती गई आगे और मैं आपके सामने जो हूँ जैसे तुमके आगे।
कल्याणी, आपके हिसाब से कंपनी में और अन्य ट्रेनिंग भी दी जा सकती है क्या? कोई और भी विषय है जिस पर आप बात करना चाहेंगे?
सबसे फर्स्ट तो बाइक हमें अगर खुद का वाहन चलाना था, किसी पर डिपेंड नहीं करता, कहीं भी हम जा सकते हैं। जब मैंने खुद फर्स्ट बार स्कूटी चलाई कैसे लगता, हम हवा से बात करें, बहुत अच्छा फील हुआ मुझे। मैं चाहती हूँ सब फील करें। और दूसरा जैसे हमें अपनी आत्मरक्षा के लिए ट्रेनिंग जैसे 1-2 स्टेप जैसे हमें सिखाई जाए कि अगर हम कहीं आगे लेने आ जा रहे हैं तो हमें कौन से कैसे हम अपनी खुद की रक्षा कर सकते हैं, हमें किसी पर डिपेंड ना।
It was wonderful to see that perspective. I'm going to start with the first panel now, so we can just request the panelists to come join me on stage. You guys can, wherever you'd like. Okay. So just to get started with some introductions, so my name is Adhvaryu. I'm a professor at UC San Diego. I'm the director of the 21st Century India Center at the Policy School at San Diego. I'm also a co-founder of GBL and JPAL affiliate, and look forward to this conversation on skills. And just want to introduce the distinguished panelists that we have today. Jalandhar Giri is the director at Shahi Exports, which is India's largest apparel manufacturer. He's got over 35 years of experience in the apparel industry, and Mr. Giri's efforts and leadership have been instrumental in the growth of that business, which currently employs 115,000 people. and 70% of that population are women. His work has demonstrated that the apparel and textile industry's role is really critical in addressing some of the challenges we're thinking about today, in particular around women's employment, women's empowerment, and career growth. And as a director, he continued to lead a team on good deeds through decades of experience and creative approach to sustainable development. Raffaella Sadun is the Charles E. Wilson Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School. Her research focuses on managerial and organizational drivers of productivity and growth in corporations and in the public sector as well. She's co-founded several large-scale projects to measure management practices and managerial behavior in organizations, such as the World Management Survey and the Executive Time Use Study. She's also the co-lead of the Digital Reskilling Lab, which is very relevant to our session today, so we hope to hear more about that, which is within the Harvard Business School. And finally, Daniel Uribe. Daniel is a principal at VélezReyes Foundation, recently created venture philanthropy platform, which is founded by David Vélez, the founder of Nubank, the largest digital bank in the world, and his partner Mariel Reyes, which seeks to transform Latin America into a region with equal access to opportunities for all by investing in education and leadership initiatives, amongst other things. And so Daniel at VélezReyes co-leads the firm's education strategy. He's been an education entrepreneur and an investor in his previous careers, aiming to provide better academic and professional development opportunities for Latin America's youth. So I welcome you all. Let's have a round of applause for the panel. I just want to start us off, thinking a bit about the role of skills in the sort of broader conversation that we're having around the private sector's role in poverty alleviation and development, and some of the themes around the conference today. So obviously, skills and the skills that workers have play a critical role both in their own career developments and income growth, but also in the sort of productivity and growth and success of firms. So firms have long recognized this, and this is one of these kind of easy win areas where it's very critical for firm success, and firms have long known that we need skilled worker populations to actually generate profit, grow, boost productivity. So here, I think, as opposed to some of the other areas we're going to be thinking about today, there's already a very clearly trodden path. Firms do this kind of investment all the time. There's still a lot of challenges, though, particularly investing in non-traditional skills. So, for example, firms, in the manufacturing sector have very well-developed programs for investing in technical skills for populations, for worker populations. But when it comes to non-technical skills or soft skills, there's a lot less emphasis. And that might be because firms sort of don't have the capacity to deliver those programs. They don't have the understanding that those skills are important for certain job roles. It might be that their perceptions are changing with the growth of technology. So for a variety of reasons, this is an area that needs a lot of work. The other thing that Esther highlighted in the previous session was the idea that there's a huge interaction between skills and technology within firms. So as firms adapt to new technologies coming to the fore. In particular, we live in an age of automation in manufacturing and other processes, as well as growing influence of AI in a lot of sectors. Firms are rapidly adapting to the kinds of skills that the sort of workforce of the future needs. So how can firms best deliver these skills in a way that benefits both workers as well as the firm? So that's the sort of general setup of today's panel. I want to start just by getting your thoughts one by one on what you think some of the challenges are to recruiting and recruiting skilled workers into your workforce and delivering kind of skilling interventions within the workplace. What do you think some of the major challenges are, both operationally as well as some of the things that you've observed in your study of this work?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Maybe we can start with Mr. Giri and progress that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Ach. It has been a great pleasure to be here to be part of this great panel. And particularly the skilling is very close to my heart. Just for a moment, imagine the world is devoid of skill. What do you think, what will happen? There's no clear answer. It will be blank completely. That gives us the idea that skills are the foundations of the civilizations, will not exist without the skills. Now, when we are talking about these skills, of course, Professor has talked about the vocational skills, technical skills, and soft skills. Both the skills are very, very important. Hard skills, of course, we keep on spending years of this education. We are taking the degrees, we are going to the college, we are going to the universities, acquiring those technical knowledge, and thereafter we are going in the job market. Once you acquire the technical skills or the hard skills, it is easy to get job. It's a passport to the world of employment. But is that enough? That's not enough. It will give you the job, but can you sustain the job? For sustaining the job, you need different set of skills, and those are the soft skills. Just imagine you have high degree of hard skills and low degree of soft skills. What is going to happen? You will get a job, but since you have low degree of soft skills, it will be difficult to retain the job. Another scenario, you have high degree of soft skills, but low degree of hard skills. Somebody might think that, let us give a chance. You have at least, we can train you in hard skills, but you have soft skills. So there is a little dicey kind of situation. Somebody may take that view, somebody may not take that view. There could be a third scenario where you have low degree of hard skills and low degree of soft skills. You are out. You will not be in a position to get the job. I mean, this is the practical kind of a scenario. That is what we experience. We want at least something of hard skills, something of the soft skills. If you are not having that, then you are out. The fourth scenario is you take the example, you have high soft skills and high hard skills. So what is going to happen that you will be lapped, you will be sought after, and you will get the job, you will retain the job. This is a general kind of this thing. So what I say, this hard skills take you to the job market, but soft skills make you a successful employee. Now, when we are talking about the skills, there are other dimensions also about the skills. Of course, skills can be imparted during your career also. It is not that once you join, you will not be in a position to upgrade yourself. Skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and sometimes de-skilling. These are the part of the process as such. And depending on, as you have rightly said, that the AI and the technological disruptions are knocking at your door. And you should be ready to welcome those things. Of course, in every sphere, it is not only in the garment industry, but in every sphere, this is happening. And the things are changing so fast. So we have to really adapt ourselves to those kind of situations. Now, this you can adapt only when you are strong in soft skills. Now, what are soft skills? Soft skills means, you are communicating well, you are managing your time well, your stress management is also, equally good, your problem solving, decision making, those areas also, you are quite good at, your financial literacy, your legal literacy, and various other host of the other things, adaptability, creative thinking. These are various kinds of things which are really required to continue in your job role. The third thing that Professor has asked is about, we are having 115,000 workers in our employment. So how is that, we are managing that workforce? What kind of channels that we are having? How we are recruiting the people? how we are trying to retain them, what challenges we are facing. So these are the basically some questions which everybody's mind tries to answer those questions. Now here what happens when we are having so many employees, I mean we are having more than 56, 57 factories in 8 states of India. So retention also becomes a problem. The retention in the sense that every month, and particularly our 70% workers are female workers. So the attrition rate is also a little higher because most of the workers are migrant workers. I mean, wherever the factory is there, of course, we will take the people from there, but that is not enough. So we have to take the people from different states. For that, we have almost 115 training centers we have opened. Now these 115 centers, now some are with the help of the government aid, like different schemes of the government are there. So under those schemes, we are having these training centers, and there we train the girls, for 2 months, and thereafter they are taken to the place, where they would be finding the job. There, of course, we have our hostels. Mostly, our major factories are concentrated in Bangalore, that is South India. So there we have almost 85 hostels are there. They are taken care there, completely. Their lodging, boarding, everything is taken care, and they stay over there. So once they stay there, there are some challenges which they face. Now they are away, from their villages, and basically they lose 3 things. One is, they lose their food because regional food is also another area because they will not be finding the same food which they are having in their state or what they are used to. Secondly, they lose their friends. There are no friends. Of course, there will be people who will be their batchmate, or subsequently they will make the friendship with their other employees. And the third thing is they miss their family. Now, this is the biggest challenge to retain them. 3F we call. And because of that, sometimes they work for some time and thereafter then they go back. Now, while recruiting the candidates or while mobilizing the candidates, there are various kinds of
issues
which we face. The first is...
Sorry, Mr. Giri. So I just wanted to interrupt 1 second. So I want to focus, our thinking on soft skills. I think you've done quite a lot of work on soft skills for the population. I think we'll get to retention and other related issues in a bit, and I'd love to hear more about that. What challenges do you think, in particular, are sort of faced when trying to impart soft skills to workforces, and why don't more firms, I think Shahi Exports does this quite a lot and has had great success with, skilling the population in those areas. But I think the broader question is, why don't more firms take up these kinds of skilling programs, particularly for low-skilled populations? And Raffaella, would you like to comment on this? Like, in your research, you've done quite a lot of work on managers and on sort of upper-level management, CEOs, et cetera. Do you find that same issue around the skilling of the populations of workers in those forums?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do a lot of empirical work like you, and I typically don't see my data or I don't leave the outliers. This is an outlier. Right. So we are sitting next to an outlier.
Exactly.
And the reason is the following. I think at a conceptual level, firms understand the value of skills, as you were saying. But it's hard, I think it's difficult to find firms that understand that it's their job to invest in these skills rather than relying on the external market to acquire them. The firms that do that really invest in training, are doing it because they have realized that this is an investment that it's either going to improve their productivity because they have a chance of improving the match between the skills of the person and the production process, and that is a firm-specific investment, or, as you were saying, because they understand that these are investments that maybe give a return in a different way. It's retention, it's engagement, it's understanding that the firm is investing in you. And those type of firms, I would say, I don't think that this is a majority, quite the contrary. So if you ask me why don't we see more firms going there, to some extent, maybe they may not fully be aware of these possibilities. I don't think that it's an information story. I think where I land is that this is tough, and it's tough in many dimensions. First of all, you have to understand why you want to do it. So there is a concept of understanding where you want the firm to go, what is your strategy, what are the business objectives, and how do these business objectives link to the talent and the skills of the individuals. The second layer is, even if you know it at the top, you have a fundamental issue, which is bringing the middle layer with you, the managers. Typically, the middle managers are the ones that select who gets involved in the training. They may motivate people in taking part in these training programs. And what we are hearing from organizations at the lab is that a lot of times the middle managers are bottlenecks because they don't fully understand what's in it for them. They have everything to lose. If a good worker gets trained, they lose that worker at the moment of the training. They may lose that worker once that worker is promoted. So that's a second layer of work that needs to happen. And then there are two, the fundamental issue is how do you get yourself in the shoes of the people who are going to be trained? There, I think there is a whole discussion to have about the design of the programs, when these programs take place. Are workers compensated for those times? You see that, I study management. This is a managerial problem because it's a multifaceted problem that needs to really think in terms of systems. And this I am laying out just, this is the tip of the iceberg. There are also other considerations that I think you touched upon on how do you interact with the ecosystem of the government and the trainer providers and all of that. So to your question, why don't people do it? Because it's tough.
It's tough. So, I mean, getting to the point I think that both of you are raising around, the difficulty of firms to actually implement these types of training programs to impart skills. I think for very, very large firms, there's sort of a lot of internal skilling that goes on, but lots of firms can't afford to skill their workers. And then more generally, there's the problem, I think that, Mr. Giri, you highlighted that turnover and skilling are very related. There's this old work by Becker that, shows that in a competitive labor market, you shouldn't get any firms investing in skilling their own workers. That tends not to be true empirically, and there's some rejoinders to that, obviously, but it's true that in a lot of labor markets, firms find it difficult to invest because they know that the worker's going to be out of the door in a year or two, so they're not going to capture a large part of that investment. And it kind of gets to, the work that you've done, Danielle, in terms of what role do you think that a larger ecosystem around foundations, governments, nonprofits, et cetera, have to play in skilling entire worker populations when individual firms find it difficult to step up?
So for us, we're thinking, coming from we're starting with the technology sector and focus on Latin America. So what we're seeing is that the opportunity that there is for the technology sector as it grows in Latin America and the type of salaries, the type of opportunities going to bring to a low-income population, it's big, and basically to increase the productivity of the region is huge. However, when we see the actual ecosystem, and the two big problems. First is the volume of the actual workers that are today have the required skill, both technical and soft skills, to work in the ecosystem. Just to give context, in Latin America, by 2026, there's going to be around a gap of software developers. It's around 2 million people. In Colombia specifically, 150,000 people that will be needed by companies to work as software developers. In Colombia today, there's 7,000 software engineers graduating per year. There's 10 times more accountants and lawyers that are graduating every year. So it's just a volume issue. And then when you think about, okay, once you get the workers on their entry-level developers, it's a retention and progression issue. And that's where, in order to get in, the first bar is the technical issue. Mm-hmm. But then when you are there, that's a first-year software developer, junior developer, what you see is that the progression, it depends all on those soft skills that they have. And then to add as another layer is just the rotation that you see in those companies, because of every company is looking for these workers. So sometimes, because especially when you think about the low-income workers, as they come, Sometimes they don't have the incentives to stay as much in the companies because sometimes the companies have a very short-term thinking about talent management. So they end up leaving to other companies by increases of $50, $100, $250. And that then the company say, well, but if they're leaving because of $50, $100, then I'm not that incentivized to invest in them.
Exactly.
And then finally, when you add now in the remote world, where if you, in Latin America, if you know English, basically you can get opportunities that are working remote, salary basically doubles. So that's another layer that we think also about soft skills for progression, but then it's the actual English. That changes everything. And for us as philanthropy, when we see the ecosystem, it's a dichotomy because on one hand, we're thinking in the short term, how can we help those workers have increased incomes? So of course, one incentivize English for all. But then when you see the broader ecosystem, if they're learning English, but then they're helping foreign firms improve, and then the local firms won't have the capacity to continue hiring them. And so at the end, you are not strengthening the local small business technology ecosystem if all the local workers are then working for the foreign companies.
Right, that's really interesting. So, getting back to this problem that you're highlighting, I think is something that, Mr. Giri, you know well from, the constant struggle that even dominant firms like Shahi face around recruiting talented workers and keeping them. So how do you approach this problem that, Shahi, for example, provides an incredible amount of technical and soft skills training to workers as they come into the organization, but that there's a high rate of turnover and a lot of those people are going to leave. How do you deal with that problem on a daily basis?
Yeah, keeping the workers engaged is really a challenge. And for that, there is no one solution that you can have, you apply this particular thing and then everything will be solved. No, it is, every individual is different. Every individual's needs are different. So you have to really go to those kind of basics and see that how we can tackle those issues. Now somebody may be having a problem at home, of course, we are having this gap in PACE program, personal advancement and career enhancement, and that goes on. And this we have been doing for last almost, this is the 14th batch. For the last 15 years we have been doing this. And we found this is very, very effective kind of a thing, It is, basically it has two pillars: personal advancement, that is life skills, that is what we give. And the second one is, technical kind of this thing, that is a career enhancement for technical things, So both the things we concentrate on this. And this becomes
the program that Esther highlighted just now in the talk.
Yeah. So this is really a game changer kind of a thing. Initially, we also had a lot of challenges while implementing this program. Initially, there were no takers, but we were convinced, Anand's, grandmother and father, and then we were convinced that this program is very good. Right. GAP came to us, in 2007, and GAP said, well, this is what we want to do for the female garment workers who are deficient in many respects and who are the highly kind of they don't have the those kind of things which they can advance in their career. So we should do something for them to build up their confidence and all that. So we decided that what modules we should have. We had a lot of interactions with the girls also, and then ultimately we came out with 8 modules. And this we found for last we have trained under this program 80,000 girls we have trained, and we can still find the girls from the first batch. They are working with us, and they find that this is the program which binds them together. And this is how, of course, there are issues, because sometimes these female workers, they have to leave the place because of certain other reasons. If somebody is sick in the family or get married, and then you have to move to different places. But they find that this is the program which is being implemented by Shahi since this thing. Now this program is being implemented in 18 countries of the world. And this is found very, very effective. And this we are continuing with this thing, and then we will continue with this program. Not only that, we are also doing for the other companies this program. So we have set up 30 trainers who are completely devoted to this kind of a job, and this is going to be a win-win situation. Of course, initially people were not very happy in the sense because you have to give certain time to them to go for the training. And the company's time, people feel, particularly the production people, they feel that if you are taking my workers away, for this kind of a program, then my deliveries will get affected, it will get delayed. So those challenges were there, and it was difficult time for us also to schedule, reschedule, and convince the production people that this is beneficial for us. And we did that thing. We had also done some surveys and then some studies we did, and we found that it increases efficiency, it increases productivity, which was proved and supplemented by your GBL studies also.
Right.
I mean, we have found that the study which was taken that at the end of 8 months in the program, it was some 70%, 73%, the productivity increase was there. Then after 8 months, then it was again 250, and after 20 months, 258% productivity increase was there. Plus, there were various other outcomes which were also very beneficial. So once this came before the management, they were like, well, this is very good program and this should be continued. And now we don't have to canvas for this program. Now the factories themselves, they come, then when are we going to start this program in our this thing? Because they have seen the benefit.
Right.
The retention is there, absenteeism has gone down, punctuality has increased. So these are the various kinds of interventions which are there. Normally what companies do, they feel this is sort of in a cost center. If you are doing something, this is a cost center. But it is not cost center. This is in fact the investment. As you invest in the machines, likewise if you invest in the men or female, so naturally you will find that the returns are abundant as such, which has been proved by various studies, and this is continuing.
Well, that's great to hear that the evidence has proliferated and makes a difference in convincing factories to adopt even beyond Shahi. As you mentioned, it's the program is now affecting millions of women in supply chains in 18 countries around the world. That's really fascinating. I wanted to bring the conversation to a place where I think as Esther said, she's not in the business of prognosticating the future. Maybe you'd like to prognosticate a little bit on the interaction between skills, and in particular sort of soft skills or non-technical skills, and the rise of AI. So we've, across many firms, everybody is scrambling to understand how can we best harness artificial intelligence towards productive uses. Is that going to supplant the workforce, or is it going to complement certain tasks, and will certain jobs be eliminated and others be augmented? Sort of lots of uncertainty there. But one thing's very clear, and David Deming and others have shown in work that with the rise of automation, of automating jobs, and certainly to a certain extent the rise of AI as well, there's a growing emphasis in the labor market on soft skills. Where do you see firms' interest in soft skills going with the rise of AI? How will skills and technology complement or substitute for each other? Raffaella, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm going to go back to the point, which is there is so much heterogeneity right now in how AI is being perceived, and there is so much noise that I think it's very difficult to make a generic statement. But what I can say is that perhaps if you want to think about the extremes, Daron here has written about these things too. There is clearly one set of companies that may be thinking about AI purely as an automation play, and that's a little bit of the lazy way. But it's interesting, and these are more things that are being, I think you speak with people, and I see my students at HBS doing these things, that are thinking about AI as something that is going to fundamentally change their workflows and their production processes. So for those type of organizations, it's clear that soft skills matter. Why? Well, because there are a couple of things. First of all, when you really implement AI for your organization, you need to extract a lot of local knowledge that lives in people. And so you need to get people to the level where they are, if you like, willing to train the software or willing to train the machine. I have one student who was a computer genius that at some point inherited a shoe factory. Okay, he worked at Pixar and he moved to the shoe factory. and he revolutionized the shoe factory. What did he do? He spent 2 years on the shop floor, and he worked with his employees to codify quality defects into an AI software. So that is a level of understanding of interaction with the machine that goes beyond technical. There needs to be some level of trust as well in the organization, trust in others. So that's, I think, thinking about the adoption is very important. It's going to be, I think, a key element. Thinking about how do you use AI in a team. So how do you convince other people that the algorithm has given you a good suggestion, or how do you rule out the algorithm? This is the level where I think soft skills are going to matter for the adoption. But again, I don't think that this is going to be for everybody. I think this is going to be very heterogeneous across firms. It's part of the adoption path.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so here we're looking at this, and of course we're not making predictions, but when we see the tasks that Latin Americans do, 50% of those tasks in theory could be automatized. Latin America is one of the regions with the lowest productivity per capita in the world, and that's a big risk of what could happen in this new economy, post-AI world. So we're seeing this as a risk, but also as a big opportunity. When you think about the opportunities, that there's a chance that all these applications of AI could reduce the cost of upskilling, reskilling. But more than that, what we're seeing is that we believe there's going to be a premium to experience. So what we are seeing is that a lot of entry-level jobs, the entry-level jobs of the future, will be actually the mid-level jobs of today. So when we see it in the technology sector, it's on the, we see firms that are now reducing the hiring of recent, of software engineers without experience. They're seeing that mid-level senior engineering leaders, tech leaders now can be more productive using some of the tools and applications of AI. So we see this as a problem when we see the actual education ecosystem. We see a big disconnect between the skills that the companies expect the students to have once they graduate and the skills that the students are actually having, especially in the lower income students. And what we are trying to incentivize and pilot internally is basically trying to bridge that gap between the companies and the education institutions. When we see that universities, they have, in 4 or 5 years, they develop those soft skills, and those students end up progressing more. However, as I said before, the volume is too little. But the problem with universities is that they are too expensive, so not affordable, sometimes not attainable because students end up dropping out, especially low-income students, and not flexible enough. So we've seen a big rise in this new, the shorter-term credentials, what we call the tech bootcamp ecosystem, more on the workforce development space, where there's a big opportunity there that the volume of graduates is going to increase. The times to train are shorter. These are programs that go from 3 to 12, 18 months. However, even though sometimes the highest quality of these programs end up in the terms of technical skills, sometimes the same as universities. But then the issue there is that students do not end up developing those soft skills that we need. So we're trying to basically incentivize work integrated learning, making universities incentivizing them to become, do more project-based learning, integrate apprenticeships, internships. We see a lot of some of the comparables that we want to try to integrate in Latin America are the programs like University of Waterloo does, where a 4-year student, 4-year graduate, undergraduate ends up working in 4 to 5 different companies by when they graduate. So when you do that, not only the student knows more about themselves, what they like, what they don't like, but also they develop a lot of the actual skills of what actually takes to work at a job and after. So they basically become recent grads that already have 2 years of experience.
Yeah.
So we want to try to integrate more of that into the current educational programs in the region.
That's really interesting. This brings up the sort of general point of, I think, decision points for public policy around how much of skilling should be the job of the government and how much of skilling needs to be carried out within the private sector. And obviously, to a certain extent, firms gain from skilling, and there's a profit motive to providing skills for workers, but we've seen the ways in which that breaks down, that there's a lot of turnover, skilling is costly, creating these programs is very difficult, especially when dealing with non-technical skills. So what do you all think is the role of the government and the private sector? Do they have to work in conjunction? Which parts should the government do? Obviously, in some sense, both are involved in skilling in most countries in the world, especially for low-income workforces. But how much of a role does the private sector need to play in terms of leading this effort, paying for this effort, and how much should be the role of the government?
Yeah. I recall there is a triple helix model, which means there are three partners, three actors in this model. One is government, the second one is private businesses, and the third one is academia. So these three partners are there, three actors are there. Now the role of each actor is defined or is already fixed. Now the government has to facilitate everything. Maybe facilitation could be with some sort of assistance, aid, or financial, whatever the benefits are to be given for skilling. That's number one. Secondly, businesses, of course, they are looking for the opportunities, and once there is some sort of encouragement from the government, as we have done. I mean, we have partnered with Ministry of Rural Development, we have partnered with Ministry of Textiles, and various other state governments we have partnered, and various programs, because the government also wants that the unemployed youth needs to be trained for getting suitable jobs. So it is basically the stepping stone for getting a good job in formal sector. So this is the idea which government is having. Businesses are supporting that one. In a way, they are also getting benefited because, I mean, you get, earlier we used to do, training ourselves. We used to put our own resources in training the candidates. But now we are taking the advantage of this government assistance, and then we are running these programs, and this is proving very well. But government is also happy, we are also happy. Mm-hmm. Now here, the role of academics is also very, very important, as the evaluation, the research rigors which are required, and to prove that thing, this is beneficial. Mm-hmm. From these three angles, if you look at it, then this becomes a successful kind of a model. I think this is what needs to be done. I never considered training or scaling as a cost center. It's an investment kind of activity right, which needs to be done. This is what we have to think about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Raffaella.
Yeah, so I'm going to share like a personal experience. About a year and a half ago, I was an advisor to the Draghi government, thinking precisely about these issues. And it was clear to me that what you said is absolutely true, which is we have to think about this problem as as a market, effectively, where you want people and firms to be connected, and somewhere there are frictions that are, somehow inhibit this connection. So my sense is firms have a fundamental role because they need to define what's needed. Mm. They know what skills they need. They have a view as firms, as individuals, as trade associations, to get a sense of even the skill taxonomy is something that is often missing. What do we need? And this is a fundamental input to understand what needs to be trained. The second players here that are super important are, of course, the trainers, and then we really want to think about incentivizing people. The take-up rates for this type of training programs is horrible, often. And so how do we make people certain that they are investing in something that is going to give returns to them? And also, how do we give them the means to spend time training today when often they don't have those means? Government plays an important role in first of all, because it has a convening power of bringing the firms around the table, firms that otherwise would not necessarily communicate, maybe for good reasons, but they have to communicate in defining what's needed. I think government has a fundamental role in defining the quality standard for training, because there is so much noise in what's good training and bad training, and there are no signals in terms of what's good. Mm. And then fundamentally, we are talking about active labor market policies. And so you want to think about incentives that are not just rewarding, that are shifting people towards this training. And so that requires, I think, a much more granular and well-defined understanding of when to give the subsidies and who should be having these subsidies. And because this is new and we have to learn, I think government has to also make sure that there is some sort of centralized evaluation or a way to gather data that is homogeneous about the quality and the effects of the different approaches.
That's a great point. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
I agree absolutely with Raffaella. I'm going to highlight a great work that Fundación Corona is doing in Colombia, actually. That is what we believe that government should do at a national level. But basically, they brought the Global Opportunity Youth Network going to Bogota, and they said, okay, what are the jobs, what are the needs of the 14 to 28-year-olds that have no jobs or lack of education? What are the interests and what are their needs and their current skills on one hand, and on the other hand, what are the needs of the companies, of the labor market, and then which are the education institutions that are offering programs that could bridge that.
Yeah.
They created this marketplace where they basically align on what are the quality standards of these tech bootcamps, which are the tech bootcamps that are doing great work, what should be the quality that they should have, like the programs itself, what's the length, what are the curriculum, the skills taxonomy that they should have into their programs, and then setting up some funding ranges depending on the type of the program. And they made that visible. So it was a marketplace where philanthropists could invest and say, yes, I want to support populations, vulnerable populations, migrants, women, racial, and other type of vulnerable populations. So philanthropy chips in with funding. The tech incentivizes tech bootcamps to increase and standardize the quality, but also for new bootcamps to be created and to knowing what's the money that's going to be paid. And then even, which I believe Raffaella is going to talk about this afternoon, but incentivizing financing schemes, paper results, bonds. So I understand 80% of the payment was upfront and 20% based on employability and income metrics by the end. So what's being done in Bogota with this, it's amazing. And it's going to be replicated hopefully in other cities in Colombia, Barranquilla and Cali, I understand. And this is what we believe government should be doing at a national level, and especially when we think about technology for low-income workers and students, individuals, it's changing the signaling of what a technology job is, what a digital career is, making it appealing for them, because a lot of these individuals think that it's not for them. This technology thing, it's for others, it's for Americans or for gringos and not for them. And it's trying to change that narrative that they actually can get into this type of careers.
Fascinating. That's great. So I want to take the last just 30 seconds to wrap up. And in addition to saying thank you to the panelists, I wanted to issue a call for action that we're kind of repeating throughout the day today to do more work in this space, to understand better how private sector can work in this helix that you so nicely described across government and the private sector and academia, to understand the impacts of programs, particularly in skilling, but also some of the general themes that we're going to be touching on later today, in ways in which the private sector can invest in workers to grow, to increase productivity, in ways that generate profit and return for firms, as well as kind of well-being and social impact on worker populations. There's a ton of work to be done in this space. I encourage all of you to partner and spread the word to be able to drive this agenda forward. So thank you so much to our panelists for contributing to that. And we look forward to the rest of the sessions. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. Stay seated, guys. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So let's open it up.
I had one quick question for Mr. Giri. What role do you think large dare I say, progressively minded firms like we've found Shahi to be, or outliers as Raffaella calls them, kind of play in growing this initiative, in answering, Achyuta's call to arms, by being an example, or to peer organizations that don't seem to think this may be important?
Yeah, this is a very good question. In fact, the beginning is done by the large kind of corporates or large business houses. The results, if they are weighted by academia, by third party and all that, and those results have to be highlighted in the industry across, and we have to say that because of this, this is the advantage, which you can derive, from those interventions. If this thing, because business is definitely business, again, I'll talk the business language, but business is not charity. Business always looks for what is the advantage that they will get out of these various interventions. And if they are convinced that this is the advantage that they will get, then definitely they will go for it, this thing. This is what I feel. I think we need to give a lot of publicity, whatever the good research work that you do, and give the publicity and put it across, different, with the government, with various kinds of associations, industry associations, and academia, do a lot of, publishing work. And with that, if it is constantly put in your mind, okay, this is beneficial, this will definitely, small firms, they will also, come forward with this.
Thanks. Other questions?
I'd be interested to learn what opportunities there are or challenges in merging some of the skilling, hard and soft skilling that we're talking about here, with the work that's being done for out migrants, particularly in countries like India, where there's a lot of training for those who are moving abroad to do work, and perhaps also from certain countries in Latin America where that's happening. So I'm just curious if you see any intersection there, or opportunities for the government or others to merge those programs, or find some ways to build on the skills that are being built for migrants.
Yeah, just to comment on this briefly, I know that in the garment space and in lots of other sort of low-skill industry, the Indian government has, had many schemes in place for a long time that promote skilling and migration and job placement sort of as a package. Those programs tend to be, make sense because they're solving for multiple failures. There's a lack of skill, there's spatial misallocation of worker populations, and there's sort of job search friction. So they're sort of solving all of those at once, and in theory make a lot of sense. In practice, they're extremely frictional, and they, there's very low take up. There's tons of dropout for people who do take up. Across the entire pipeline, starting right from the skilling in rural places, because this is a crazy experience for most people to undergo, to move to an urban area for the first time and work in a formal sector for the first time and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there to understand how do we make those programs less frictional. I don't know if that's a similar experience in Latin America, but
I can talk about that in Colombia. In Latin America, we have the Venezuelan migration crisis. I think over 7 million Venezuelans have been migrating the last decades. In Colombia, it is a big issue for the country. I think there's two main things that the government could help there. One is just making literally the degrees or the programs from Venezuelans actually accredited or homologated in Colombia, like a lot of, and it happens also here with the Venezuelans in the U.S. Like literally for them to be able to work, it's impossible. Sometimes they have to do the degrees again. So that homologation is a big one. But then the second one is just the unfortunate xenophobia that we're seeing when there's this. Every type of migrants come from all skills level, all type of backgrounds, and unfortunately, some of them, have been doing crime in the country. But those few that do that, unfortunately, that's a lot of the vision that a lot of the people in the streets think that Venezuelans come and they rob, they do crime, and that's unfortunate. That's something that government should try to change that narrative. And a big way to change the narrative is to incentivize companies to hire and upskill those workers that want to do that want a basic decent life, which are of course the vast majority. There'll be some thoughts.
All right, thank you so much.